So about a month ago, I was at a family wedding. And like all of those events, it is a swirling dust cloud of frenetic activity where you're rushing from one gathering to the next. But at one quiet moment, I found myself having a cup of coffee with an aunt who I see very infrequently. Now, she's getting on in years. She's approaching 90 years old, and we were catching up on life in general, and she took the opportunity to ask me about my career and what exactly is it that Itron does? I was ready for this question. I'm thinking corporate marketing is going to be really proud of me in the next 15 seconds. Well, Itron, we're a leader in the industrial Internet of Things, and we're helping our customers, who are utilities and cities, improve the management of energy and water across the globe. I'm thinking, nailed that one. I'm in really good shape. Right up until the moment that the 6-year-old sitting next to us looks up from her drawing and says, "No, Grandma, that isn't it all. That isn't it at all. His company helps save baby turtles." Mic drop, I just got out-marketed by a multitasking 6-year-old. Now, the reason I tell you this story, the background on it is that same 6-year-old had overheard a conversation between my sister and I, where my sister was explaining to me about a very innovative project that was going on right here in Florida, where the street lights are turned off in the evening on the highway next to the beach during the birthing season for sea turtles. And the reason that that's done is so that the baby turtles, when they hatch, they crawl towards the water, the moonlight over the water, rather than the bright lights back over the highway. Statistically speaking, cars and highways and baby sea turtles is not a good outcome. But it really captured this little 6-year-old's imagination. And I tell you this story not to show you the limitations of my marketing prowess, but really to give you some sense of what the power of community really means to me. What's behind this story is many companies coming together. It is the Florida Fish and Wildlife Agency. It is Florida Power and Light, and we have Christopher Chappell here from FP&L who'll be on stage later on in this session this morning. It is the Luminaire company. It is Itron providing the network backbone and the streetlight automation. But it really is all of these things coming together to help an endangered species. That is the power of the community that we really have here inside of this room. We, of course, have a societal benefit. We are at the foundation of society. We keep the lights on and the clean water flowing, and as such, we have a truly sacred and important obligation, but we also have an opportunity to do so much more. The collective capability inside of this room can engage communities, can improve operational efficiency, can reduce waste, can improve costs, and improve the reliability. All of those things really are an example of resourcefulness. Reducing costs, improving resiliency and reliability, that is what resourcefulness is all about. And you've seen and heard us use this term numerous times before. We use it in our corporate marketing and in the various corporate speeches that we've done for the last several years. But we do it not because of anything beyond the word itself, but the word really is a way to capture the essence of the company. It is our mission. It really is our purpose to make the world a better place. And really, in some small measure, it's why I'm here on this stage. About 7 years ago, almost 8 now, Philip Measy and I, Philip, our recently retired CEO, started talking about the possibility of me joining his team. For the next 2.5 years, yes, we had a pretty long courtship before we tied the knot. For the next 2.5 years, we talked about the company, its strategy, its products and services, and even the challenges that the company faces as well as the industry faces. And really, what made me join the company, what made me want to be part of Itron was this notion of resourcefulness, this ability to improve efficiency and make the world a better place. Now, this is far from my first IUW, Itron Utility Week, but it is my first as CEO. And for that, I am truly grateful that you're here, that you're choosing to spend some time with us. And I'm excited for the future of Itron, the future of the industry, and what we can all do together within this community. At Itron, we firmly believe the way energy and water is managed will define the future. Water is life. Energy is prosperity. And both of these resources are increasingly strained by growing population and the urbanization of society as we know it. The UN suggests that by the year 2050, there will be some 10 billion people roaming this planet. And 2/3 of those are going to live in major urban centers. That trend is alive and well in the United States as well, where the urban concentration of our population is already over 80%. Because of that urbanization, we have the challenge of providing robust and resilient services inside of those urban centers themselves, especially when those centers are increasingly in the path of natural disasters. They're along coasts or in areas where wildfires are prone. In 2017, we saw Hurricane Irma and Harvey and Maria and catastrophic wildfires in the Pacific region of the United States. And by the time we got to 2018, there were some 14 natural disasters that increased the cost associated with those disasters by more than $1 billion per disaster. And none of that is even touching the cybersecurity threat that we face as an industry every day. Now, I would guess most of you traveled to Florida to come to this conference, and if you were like me, you rode an airplane to get here. Well, it was time for me to head to the airport. I reached into my pocket, and I pulled out that computer, the smartphone that generally is resident in my pocket, and I tapped the screen a few times, and lo and behold, I knew when the car was coming to pick me up to take me to the airport. I knew my driver's name. I knew how much it was going to cost and approximately what time I'd arrive at the airport. And I knew in real time the location of the car, plus or minus a minute. He was going to be outside my driveway in 5 minutes from now. Well, that expectation that is set among consumers, among all of us today, for that instant gratification of being able to complete a task, understand the service, and understand in real time is something that doesn't live only within the rideshare, the Uber and Lyft model, but it comes to our industry as well. Can we provide the same level of service for our customers, tell them how much energy or water they've used, how much it's costing them, what can they do to save it, and in the unfortunate event of an outage, can we tell them plus or minus 1 minute when the power is coming back on? A truly daunting challenge. And it doesn't stop there. We have aging infrastructure. We have an aging workforce that will want to retire at some point. We have a grid that is increasingly complex with the emergence of local storage and renewables. Think about it. Rooftop solar is the equivalent of anyone can just go out to the freeway, add their own exchange, get onto the freeway, start driving the wrong direction. That's the equivalent of what you face as an electricity provider today because of the changing grid itself. These challenges are truly daunting. Marina said it, but yes, there are challenges, but we have the power of the community and we have a way to steadily overcome these things. From an Itron perspective, there really are 3 things that I want to leave you with today that talk about what we can contribute towards those challenges. And those things are innovation, solving problems in new and different ways, technology, new technologies to meet the unmet needs of the industry of today and tomorrow, and finally, insights. What can we do with all of the data? Once you've got all of that in your hands, how do you mine it for insights, and how do you develop a new picture and be able to take business actions, real outcomes from that data? Itron has a long history of innovation. I don't need to spend a tremendous amount of time on it. You're here, so you know a little about what we do. We were born from a utility to serve utilities. The first handheld radio to be able to make the meter reading process much more efficient. One step further, why walk around the neighborhood when you can drive? You can collect the data in a more robust manner, you can do it more efficiently, you can do it faster. enter into the AMI era. So now you can start to have two-way messages, and you've got a fixed network, so you can collect the data more often. You've got a richer set of data with deeper insights into the grid itself. That's the last 50 years of our history in 30 seconds or less. But in each step of the way, we're improving security, the robustness, the reliability, and the capability. And I hope, and I really do believe, that we're just getting started. Once these canopy networks are built, you can now start to do all sorts of interesting things. You can automate streetlights. You can use the same network and share it across utilities or across commodities. So share the network, build it once, use it multiple times. You can add other sensors into the system. You can look for noise. You can measure pollution and air quality. You can look for empty parking spots so you can reduce downtown traffic. How about gunshot detection, so you know what happened and where you might be able to send law enforcement in the unfortunate case that it would happen. In a water world, you can figure out where pipes are leaking. You can find out when water's flowing the wrong direction with an overflow sensor. All of these things that I'm talking about are real-world examples that you can see today. You can probably walk next door to the Knowledge Center later on today and see demos of most of them. The reason this is truly important, though, is the world is moving at a much faster pace today than it ever has. Our standard utility cycle, where you buy an asset and you amortize it over many, many years, a decade or two, or perhaps even longer, the world changes much faster. You need a way that you can have some agility. You can pay as you go. You can grow and add additional capability into your system. You never quite know exactly what you might need, but how do we enable that agility, and how do we allow us to amortize more and seize the opportunity that is ahead of us? That's really the type of system that we're thinking about. And when we think about the notion of smart cities or industrial Internet of Things and distributed intelligence and more, that's really about where the industry will go and the innovation that we want to continue to provide. Technology can solve many challenges. 2017, it's time for Irma to roar ashore here in Florida. Fortunately, FPL was ready, and Christopher will get into this a little bit later on today, but because of good planning and preparation and a solid foundation of AMI and other technologies in place, they were able to restore connections to about 2 million consumers within one day after the storm, and within the next roughly 1 week, the remaining 4.4 million within their service territory. Similarly, in Houston, Hurricane Harvey comes ashore. Well, okay, comes ashore 5 times, and dumps some 60 inches of rain in the local area. Think about that, 60 inches of rain in some areas. If we'd put that much water inside of this room, everyone seated before me would be breathing through a snorkel. A tremendous amount of water. CenterPoint Energy dealt with it fairly well. They were ready with a smart grid, with a distribution automation system, and they avoided some 45 million outage minutes during those 8 days when the heavens opened and the water came down. And remarkably, during that entire time, they did thousands of routine disconnects and reconnects. The utility ran normally in the presence of all of this pressure that was going on around them. Truly an amazing story that's based on the underlying technology and the robustness, preparation, and planning that was put in place. How about safety? Con Ed takes safety very seriously, as every utility does. Here's an example where once a basic AMI network was in place, they were able to grow the capability of the network by attaching a methane sensor from a company called New Cosmos in combination with Itron. It flows through the same AMI backbone, the same network itself, and to the extent that it detects a methane leak, can trigger an alert back to the central office to let everyone know what is going on. In a limited trial, in the first 6 months in the field, they found some 20 leaks, 0 false positives, and they were able to get a service technician on site to prevent a safety incident from ever even occurring. A great story, and it bodes well, and something that I think we can scale across our network for any gas utility out there. Come to water itself. Once again, I'll use Irma as the example. 170-mile-an-hour winds rushes across Turks and Caicos, damaging 90% of every structure on the island itself by the time it passed. water leaks in the system everywhere. But again, because of good AMI and on-site analytics to understand what was happening inside of their network, they were able to restore service to the territory within just 4 days after the storm. And amazingly, no lives were lost through that storm on the island itself. Whether we're talking about outage messages or power line sensors to detect wind and cope with forest fires and wildfires, pole tilt sensors to understand what's happening with utility poles, integrated distribution automation to better manage outage themselves. All of these new technologies go towards helping to cope with natural disasters as well as improve operational efficiency in the normal case. But is that ability to cope with those pressure points are something that we've done research on, and Marina will be on stage to talk about it later on today. But it also is an outstanding example of the types of technology that can be made available to improve the operations of all of our systems and improve the service that we provide to our customers. Let's spend a moment and talk about insights themselves. And what I mean by that is data. The world runs on data. It is the best way to understand how to use the assets you have and improve services. But where the real rubber meets the road is being able to analyze the data and find out what you can do with it and take an action on it, a business outcome as a result of it. The cornerstone of our outcome strategy is something known as DI, distributed intelligence. It is intelligent computing out at the edge of the network, at the endpoint level. And this is a very new capability from a utility point of view, but I would venture to say you've seen this movie before. 2007, you bought your first smartphone. At the time you bought it, you probably didn't know exactly all the applications you were going to run on it, but I bet today you probably can't think about living in a world without mobile banking. You don't have to run to the bank to deposit a check, to transfer money. That sort of capability and the 5 other apps that you use 5 times a day is, in my mind, the equivalent of what DI means for our industry. Fast forward, it's going to become as indispensable to our industry to cope with the changing needs of the environment as smartphones are in our consumer society every day. Whether we're talking about theft or broken neutral or high impedance detection, maybe it is a DR, a demand response kind of application where you can work with assets inside of the home to manage the load on the network. Or maybe it is load disaggregation to understand what's going on inside of the home or help the utility understand when there's 5 EVs in a cul-de-sac that's about to overload a transformer. All of those are applications, DI applications that are in prototype form or development today, and that's just a start. We can go further from there. Not everything can be analyzed at the endpoint. Sometimes there's a need to look at big data. The petabytes of data that utilities generate on a monthly, if not weekly basis, and that's where back office analytics come into the picture. There are trends in that data that you can pull out. You can find preventive maintenance activities. You can figure out ways to reduce outage. You can assure revenue, and that's where our platform known as Itron Ava, which is an overall arching name that houses our outcomes-based solutions. This can help you make the most of your data and transform your business. Whether you're talking about data and insights that are mined from the edge or from the cloud itself, where it really translates into something interesting, that's when you can find something and you really can take action on it. And here I think a perfect example is water operations management. So you can take a look at all of the data that's going on in your network, and rather than digging up an entire city street to find a leaking pipe, you can pinpoint a little bit smaller area, dig here to find leaking pipes. In water today, more than 30% of all treated water, once it is treated, it's lost before it's billed to a customer in the distribution network. I can't think of any other industry, well, legal industry, where 30% of the product is lost on the way to the consumer, but powers on. We have a way, of course, to make this much more efficient, and we can help with things like water operations management. All of these things that I'm talking about, distributed intelligence apps in an app store, or hardware like a new Cosmos methane sensor, or back office analytics or other services are enabled with an ecosystem. Today, we've got more than 220 partners that are actively engaged with us in developing these types of capabilities, and that list continues to grow more and more. You can see some of them in the Knowledge Center here, and we will continue to grow it. That's our commitment to you. I've talked about our mission to make the world a more resourceful place. I've given you some ideas on innovation and technology and data insights as to how we want to participate in all of that. But what brings it all together is inside of this room, and that's all of us. That we have the power to unlock these capabilities. It is really the power in the community when we all work together and learn together. We have the ability within this room to transform the industry, to improve the way we manage energy and water for the future of our businesses and the future of the planet overall. Thank you very much for being here. I'm truly, truly grateful that you've granted us this time. Together, we can make the world a more resourceful place. And maybe, just maybe, we can help that baby turtle as he starts out on his journey of life. Thank you.